Skylar Neese was a 16-year-old girl who resided in Star City, a small town in West Virginia. She was the only child of parents Dave and Mary, and everyone that knew her thought she was a bubbly girl and a loyal friend. Skylar was a high achiever at school, exceeding in almost every subject, including those she disliked. She was an honor student and liked reading a lot. She wanted to become a criminal defense lawyer, so she had a bright future ahead of her. She was also working in the afternoons at Wendy's, a fast food restaurant, with some close friends because this is what Skylar liked, to spend as much time as possible with her friends. Like any other girl, Skylar had a best friend whom she trusted a lot and kept her company all the time. For Skylar, this friend was Shelia Eddy, whom she met when she was 8 years old. They used to be inseparable. They were best friends. Skylar's father described Shelia like another daughter in his home, a girl who had been in and out of their house since age 8. In their freshman year at University High School, Skylar and Shelia met Rachel Shove. All three were classmates. Rachel was part of a wealthy religious family. Her parents were divorced and she was the only child. People who knew her said that she was charismatic and that she really liked attention. The three of them were very close and they would spend all of their free time together. A lot of people said they acted more like sisters than friends. At some moment, Shelia became this wild teenager that was smoking weed, drinking, partying. She seemed she didn't care about anything and she was pushing the limits too far. She was a perfect example of a bad girl. The other friends of Skylar thought that Shelia was a terrible influence on her and advised her to stay away from Shelia, but Skylar wouldn't listen. Also, the friends of Rachel had the same impression that Shelia is a bad influence on Rachel. They tried to talk to her, but Rachel did not care about these opinions. As time went by, Shelia and Rachel seemed to be a lot closer. They would often go out together and they would not invite Skylar. Now 3 was a crowd and Skylar was cast aside. Skylar was very loyal to her friends, so she was really hurt and at the same time furious that she was left out, so she vented her frustrations on Twitter. At the beginning of July in 2012, after coming back from a night shift at Wendy's, Skylar received a call from her friends who invited her to sneak out with them to smoke marijuana. She was initially hesitant because lately she had a lot of arguments with Shelia and Rachel. But after a series of phone calls from the girls, Skylar changed her mind. She just thought she was going for a joyride. She told her parents she wants to sleep early, gave them a goodnight kiss, and then went to her room. At approximately 12:30 a.m., Skylar climbed out of her bedroom window, crossed the street, and got into the back seat of Sheila's car. The girls drove to Pennsylvania, heading to a spot where all 3 of the girls had occasionally smoked marijuana. The next morning, Skylar's parents, Mary and Dave, got ready for work as usual, and they assumed that Skylar was in her room. Later, Dave came back to give Skylar his car so that she could take it to her shift at Wendy's. When he got home, he went to Skylar's room and realized that her door was locked, which was unusual. He started knocking, calling for her, but she didn't answer. So he went outside of the house to the window so he could look inside her room. When he got there, he saw the window open with a small bench under it, so it only made sense that she snuck out after kissing them goodnight. He worried, but he didn't think she ran away because he had no reason to. Plus, she left her phone charger, she didn't take any money or things she would need if she didn't plan to return. He called Shelia to ask if she knows anything about his daughter. She said she had talked to Skylar around midnight the night before, but that she hadn't heard from her since. She also said she had no idea where she could be. At this point, Dave still had hope that Skylar would come back soon, but when she didn't show up to her shift at Wendy's, her parents really started to panic. Skylar was very responsible and it was uncommon for her to do such things. They contacted the police right away and reported Skylar missing.
I have a daughter that's 16 years old. Apparently she snuck out of her room last night and she hasn't been seen since. None of her friends can get a hold of her. I can't find her.
What's her name?
Skylar.
They started contacting friends and relatives telling them what had happened. Later that day, Shelia called Mary and Dave. This time she admitted that her, Rachel and Skylar snuck out the night before and they had driven around the city and getting high, and that they dropped her back at her house. The investigators checked the security camera footage from Skylar's apartment building, which showed Skylar getting into a car which couldn't be identified at around 12:30 a.m. The footage was too grainy, so at this point they have no idea who this car belongs to. She was initially considered by law enforcement found authorities to be a runaway, and an Amber Alert was not immediately issued in connection with her disappearance. The investigators thought she was not happy in her family, so she left in the middle of the night. But her parents, Dave and Mary, knew that Skylar didn't run away and tried to convince the police about it. The only possibility they considered at this point was her being abducted by someone. So they started to post flyers about their missing daughter in the county and wherever they could. Shelia helped with search efforts, and Skylar's mom, Mary Neese, said that she was really involved in the search. She always wanted to know any new leads in the investigation and continuously posted about Skylar on social media, pleading that she comes home safe. One day, she and Mary Neese sat on Skylar's bed and cried together. Shelia was considered like family. After some time, law enforcement started to take things more seriously. After looking more into Skylar's background, they realized that running away was really out of character for her. So the FBI and the West Virginia State Police decided to join the search for Skylar. Investigators began interviewing Skylar's school friends. Rumors were flying all over the school. One rumor was that she might have run away with a boyfriend. Another rumor was that she was abducted by an online predator. But the biggest one was that Skylar went to a party and overdosed on heroin. It was believed that people there panicked and they disposed of the body. So with nothing else to work with, most of the investigators believed that this was the case, except one. Police officer Jessica Colbank didn't buy it. It seemed to her that Rachel and Sheila's story were exactly the same, like they were rehearsed. It appeared to her that Shelia was acting wrong and Rachel was scared to death. For months, the investigators chased down tips that led nowhere. Even they didn't initially suspect the girls, but they thought they might know more than they were saying and that maybe they were protecting someone. So investigators continued bringing in Shelia and Rachel for interviews. Then they realized that the car in the surveillance video belonged to none other than Shelia Eddy. Authorities then cross-referenced surveillance footage from nearby businesses from the day Skylar disappeared. They found the same car that was at Skylar's apartment near a convenience store in Blackstone, West Virginia, west of Star City and Morgantown. However, Shelia and Rachel both claimed they went east that night, so the girls were caught in a lie. Shelia claimed that she and Rachel picked up Skylar at about 11 p.m. and they took her back home before midnight, but surveillance videos showed otherwise. The footage showed that Skylar actually left her apartment at 12:30 a.m. Then the stories started to conflict and they began to be considered suspicious. Skylar's mother defended the girls countless times as police tried to tell her what they suspected. Also, Skylar's father told investigators to stop harassing them, that they are Skylar's best friends. Lies were starting to come out and evidence began pointing to Shelia and Rachel. Although police believed they had something to do with Skylar's disappearance, they didn't have enough to charge them. They needed to get a confession out of them. In order to clarify the case, the police decided to subject the young women to a polygraph test. Shelia was calm and cool, but Rachel wasn't so strong. Ever since Skylar had died, she was having strange and aggressive behaviors. Something was going on with Rachel, and it got so bad that her divorced parents actually moved back in together to help their daughter. The day Rachel was supposed to take the polygraph test, she panicked so much that her mother had to call 911.
I have an issue with a 16-year-old daughter of mine. I can't control her anymore. She's shooting nuts, she's screaming, she's running through the neighborhood. Give me the phone. Like, no, this is over. This is over. My husband's trying to contain her. Please.
Rachel was picked up and sent to a mental institution. She was released 3 days later and was immediately questioned by the police. After the nervous breakdown that she just had, Rachel decided to confess. She told authorities that she and Shelia had planned Skylar's murder a month before the crime while they were in science class. The plan was to carry out the murder right before Rachel left for summer camp. On the night of the murder, Rachel took a shovel from her dad's house and Shelia brought 2 kitchen knives. They also made sure to bring a change of clothes, paper towels, bleach, and other cleaning supplies. The plan was to pick Skylar up from her house at night and drive her to a remote area to smoke marijuana. This was not something unusual for them because they would often drive to Brave, a town nearby, to smoke marijuana in the woods, so there was nothing that could have made Skylar suspicious. Once they were in the woods, they got out of the car and chatted for a while. Then Shelia told Skylar they had forgotten to bring a lighter, and Skylar volunteered to go back to the car to fetch her own lighter. Once Skylar had turned her back, Rachel and Shelia counted to 3, which was their agreed upon signal, and then began to stab Skylar. She attempted to run but was only able to run a few feet before Rachel tackled her to the ground and continued the assault. While Skylar was trying to defend herself, she cut Rachel's ankle, but Shelia continued to stab Skylar until there was complete silence. Rachel and Shelia attempted to bury the body, dragging Skylar near a tree, but the soil was too hard and rocky to dig a hole. So they decided to cover Skylar's body with rocks, fallen branches, and dirt, and there it would lay for 7 months. They returned to the car to clean themselves, and then they left. Police officer Ronnie Gaskin told in an interview, quote, "We asked Rachel, why did you guys kill Skylar? And her only answer to that was, we just didn't like her." But investigators have struggled to comprehend a motive for Skylar's slaying beyond Rachel's statement that she and Shelia didn't want to be friends with her anymore. The prosecutor said that Shelia and Rachel were worried that Skylar would tell their secret. She did not elaborate on what those secrets were, although she implied Shelia and Rachel may have had a relationship. But according to Skylar's journal, the 3 young women had gathered at Rachel's house to have a good time. That day they consumed alcohol and lost track of their actions. And then Rachel and Shelia had a sexual affair that Skylar witnessed. She agreed that it would be a secret between the 3 of them. Moreover, Skylar was not mad at her friends for being in a relationship, but the girls started to argue over trivial issues, and Skylar was furious and she posted on her Twitter account, "I'll tell the whole school the shit I know." Rachel and Shelia were so enraged that they started planning the murder. The problem was that Rachel came from a very conservative and religious family. Also, she was in a romantic relationship with a man, so having sex with a woman would have been a complete scandal. Now that they knew what really happened, authorities kept it on the down low and decided to ask Rachel to speak to Shelia about their crime and wiretape it. But unfortunately, Rachel was very scared and couldn't do it. It seems that Shelia had a lot of mental control over Rachel, like she was under some sort of spell. In January 2013, Rachel took investigators to the woods and showed them where she and Shelia murdered Skylar. She couldn't remember the exact location because everything was covered in snow. Initially, the investigators couldn't find the body, but a week later, they finally made a break in the case when they found Skylar's body. When the crime lab confirmed that it was Skylar's body, the U.S. Attorney Office publicly announced it. Shelia, still keeping up appearances, pretended to be devastated over the news that her friend had been found dead, tweeting, "Rest easy, Skylar, you'll always be my best friend. I miss you more than you could ever know." So now the police not only had a confession, but they had a body. It didn't take long for them to match blood samples in Sheila's car to Skylar's DNA. And on May 1st, 2013, authorities went to pick up Shelia. At the time, she was eating at a restaurant with her mom. As soon as they walked outside, the police officers put Shelia under arrest for first-degree murder. It was decided that she would be tried as an adult. Shelia was charged with 1 count of kidnapping, 1 count of first-degree murder, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder. She pleaded not guilty. Her lawyer has filed a motion to dismiss the testimony of Rachel Shove. Sheila's lawyer challenged the mental stability and stress Rachel was under when she pleaded guilty and said that Shelia participated in the murder. The judge refused to set bail for Shelia and ordered her to remain in a juvenile detention facility until her trial, which was postponed, so the defense attorney could collect more evidence. It was expected for Rachel to testify against Shelia if the trial had come to fruition, and there were also fears of harsh punishment. 1 week before Shelia was scheduled to face trial, she decided to plead guilty to first-degree murder with mercy. Though the conviction carries a life sentence, she will be eligible for parole after 15 years. At the hearing, the judge asked Shelia a series of questions to ensure she understood her plea. Shelia admitted her guilt but offered no explanation for the crime, and at no time did she express remorse for her actions. Rachel was also tried as an adult. She received a sentence of 30 years in prison and will be eligible for parole after 10 years. An Amber Alert was not issued in Skylar's disappearance because the circumstances did not meet all 4 criteria for an alert to be issued. In memory of their daughter, Dave and Mary helped pass Skylar's Law in West Virginia. It requires Amber Alerts for all missing children, not only those believed to have been kidnapped. Dave and Mary also transformed the wooded area where Skylar's body had been found into a memorial, a place where people can come and remember Skylar as the good girl that she was. Did you hear about this case? What do you think about it? Do you think Rachel and Shelia are psychopaths, or they just made a big mistake at a very young age? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.